Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I, Ken, read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Today's letter is from Jill, and joining me for this letter reading is my fabulous co-worker, Amy. Amy, would you like to reintroduce yourself for everyone?
Yes, hello everyone. It's so nice to be back. As you know, am an attachment healing coach. I work for Ken, and you can find me on the website. I love talking about attachment and healing and breakup and everything. So please keep sending us your letters because we love reading them.
We truly find that I'm saying this sort of half-heartedly, a little bit facetiously, a little bit sarcastically, and also a bit of truth. We do love reading the tragedy of these experiences because there's so much you can pull out of it.
Yes, and I just feel like everyone that we speak to and the feedback that we get is that there's such a community here and everybody feels so validated and heard. And so, it's just so good to know that you're not alone in your pain.
No, and I have to say, like Amy and I were talking about this before we came on board, it's actually also very healing for us as readers as well too, and clinicians or coaches going through this because often there'll be pockets of stuff that come up where we're like, oh yeah, that's some unfinished business for us. Anyways, let's get into it. So Jill writes, thank you for reading my letter. I wanted to submit it because the whole story left me devastated, even though the relationship was quite short. In September of 2024, I met a guy on a dating app and we fell in love almost instantly. As we began spending more time together, my fondness for him grew with each passing day. He seemed mature, caring, and attentive. It was clear that he understood how relationships work and was looking for a long-term partner. He treated me like a princess whenever we'd go out. He opened car doors for me, carried my bags, and even cleans my clothes when they got dirty from pottery. We connected easily, our senses of humor matched, and we share similar habits, backgrounds, and health issues. He always keeps me informed about his schedule in advance and remembers little details I share, like how much I love listening to and singing along with music in the car. I love that, so I totally respect that. When his car radio was broken, he suggested borrowing his brother's car for our outing, which made me feel special. No one had ever done something like that for me before. We will come back to that point because that's very relevant. At the beginning, he came across as a very secure person. He readily shared anything I asked about, showing me his YouTube page and pictures from family gatherings. Now, I'm more of an introvert and I take some time to open up due to my past experiences, but he reassured me by saying, no worries, I'll get there. We dated for about a month and I began to wonder where our relationship was heading. He mentioned he wanted to take some time to see if this was the right one for him, explaining that in the past he had rushed into things. His previous situations often turned into long-term relationships, but unfortunately, none of them had worked out. I mentioned that I could wait a few months for him to make a decision, And that week, I asked him to go on a day trip with me, and we had a blast just chatting away. I wanted to know what he valued in relationships, and he gave me some pretty thoughtful answers. By the end of the trip, he asked me to be his girlfriend, saying I seemed perfect for him and that his mum would probably like me. I said yes happily, but I couldn't help feeling a little uneasy since he had a habit of jumping from one relationship to another, and I wondered why he mentioned his mum liking me instead of just saying he liked me. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's just pause here for a second. I don't know about you, Amy. Like when I read this, nothing is like glaring red flag or even warning light sort of stuff just yet. Like if anything, it's boy meets girl is like this is all very cute and romantic. Yeah, it's a bit intense. But on face value, I wouldn't be like screaming run for the hills.
I maybe I'm feeling a little cautious tonight, but I'm screaming a little bit.
Okay.
And but I agree with you. At face value, completely, totally, like, oh, cute boy meets girl. This is the start of a rom-com. I too very much resonated with the image of being in a car with a romantic partner and listening to music and like screaming the lyrics. I think that's so fun. And so, yeah, it sounds fun. You're meeting on a dating app. So here's where I start to get a little nervous. And of course, we're reading this through the lens of looking for problems. So obviously, I'm going to be problem oriented here. But whenever I hear the words, we fell in love almost instantly, I think there's cause for pause. Only because, and here's the thing. I'm not saying love at first sight doesn't exist. I'm not saying that people don't have the right to say when they're in love, but oftentimes when you fall in love instantly, it's limerence, it's infatuation, it's something coming from wounding. So that's a little bit, it's something to note. And I'm also starting to sniff out an uncomfortable power dynamic here, Jill, where you are waiting for him to make a decision as to whether or not he like wants to be with you or wants to be with you in the capacity that you want to be with him. And that's a position that we never really want to be in. It should be more of like, hey, I'm on this page. Does this align with you? If not, maybe we should talk about whether or not we should be spending more time together. So that is making me a little bit nervous so far. But let's continue.
Yeah, I'll just say I love everything you added. I thought that was really relevant stuff. I would agree that there's definitely intensity here and also waiting on him to make the decision. Speaking of him wanting to make a decision, I agree with Jill. Why the hell was his mum part of the conversation around that? Like to me, I know where that comes from. It's that whole thing of like, I don't feel good about my partner selection unless my parents feel good about it. But I mean, that's a very insecure part that shouldn't really have a major influence over our dating choices, in my personal opinion. And it suggests maybe that could be a hint of some enmeshed sort of stuff going on with the mum. The second thing I want to quickly add too is I wanted to circle back to this. Jill said, his behavior made me feel special like no one else had ever done before. I want to just point out how common I hear that from people who go through these experiences. Because often when you date someone with who's like this, and we don't know their attachment style yet, but I think we can have a pretty safe guess at what it's going to be. Um, I would say that a lot of people who've experienced emotional neglect have not actually been given a lot of tenderness, warmth, love, and been taken care of. Usually, I find a lot of people who date these individuals are big givers. And it's not to say that everyone's a giver who dates someone who presumably will have an avoidant attachment style, but that's usually a sign of, emotional wounding. And so that kind of plays into what Amy was saying about like the limerence and like the honeymoon-esque nature of this, like being treated like a princess. Sure, some of those things are cute and fun and great. But when it becomes problematic is when it's part of a bigger picture issue. In other words, like there's some childhood trauma stuff that's causing us to get involved with people who, sure, at first treat us like a prince or a princess or a royalty, if you will, but then lead us off a cliff because they can't meet our needs, seemingly. So, anyways, that's part of a bigger conversation, but let's keep going into this. So, later, he shared details about his past relationships, both of which were long distance due to his job as a pilot. His first relationship thrived for a year but faltered during COVID when restrictions affected their connection. In his second relationship, things became strained after he moved back to the same city. Interesting. His girlfriend often competed for his attention against his mother and was clingy. Oh, well, there you go. So, it seems like the mum is definitely a piece in this experience as well, too. So the ex was apparently clingy, checking his phone and needing constant support. They broke up when she wanted to get married, but he was hesitant to propose, leading her to end things as he felt she wasn't the right person for him. Interesting. We will come back to that later. Besides two long-term relationships, he claimed to have hooked up with, oh my God, he claimed to have hooked up with over 30 women. I found it puzzling that he shared these stories, as I believed a man who respects his partner wouldn't discuss past encounters so openly. Yeah, I agree. After breaking up with his last girlfriend in July, he told me he'd hooked up with three other women before we met in September. Far out. Another major red flag for me was when he confessed that he cheated in his first long-term relationship. Despite things going well in the first year, he'd felt a lot of shame and didn't have the courage to come clean to her. He'd expressed deep remorse for his actions and contemplated sharing this part of his past with the next girlfriend, but ultimately chose not to. Oh, great. His second long-term girlfriend thought very highly of him, which made him hesitant to reveal what he considered to be a dark aspect of himself. He opened up to me because he wanted to be honest about his shameful past and the guilt he carried, not wanting to enter a new relationship without transparency. Okay, well, that's good of him. Whilst his revelations shocked me and raised some concerns, he genuinely seemed interested in settling down. I believe in the goodness of people, and that can be redeemed through self-reflection. So, despite my reservations, I decided to give him a chance. One noticeable observation about his past girlfriends is that they were all on depression medication and some of them cheated on him. Oh. All right, let's take a pause here. We are now into red flag city, like big time. Where before I was like, meh. Now I'm like, fuck, this is a forest.
Yes, we have entered Red Flag City, which is the capital of DA land. No, I'm just kidding. All of the attachment styles have their red flags. But Jill, this man happens to, I believe, be a DA, which is fine. Not all DAs have red flags. He has a lot of red flags. Like Ken mentioned before, the fact that his mom is coming up twice in these like peculiar ways that are closely related to relationship issues only about a month into this relationship with him, or this thing that isn't even a defined relationship necessarily with him yet, is extremely concerning. I definitely agree with Ken that this is indicative of some enmeshment, which, as we know, is a very common starting ground for people to have a dismissive avoidant attachment style. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, the 30 women, I'm a very sex positive person. I don't believe in shaming people. I think it's all good in the hood, but this is concerning. I think it's also concerning that he's telling you this. I like in general, I don't think sharing these things with partners is like a red flag or anything bad. I think it's good to be open, but the timing of when he's sharing it to me, it's almost like he's now at the phase where he's done sort of romancing and love bombing and into the phase of now I'm gonna just show you how bad I can be and like let's see how you react and stick around. Of course, the fact that he has two long distance relationships back to back is very indicative of dismissive avoidant attachment. And the fact that one of the relationships ended when he came back to the same city, that just really goes to show you that he probably has some intimacy issues and is way more comfortable in less committed relationships where you can't really see each other and your lives are really not integrated. Um, so, this is all very concerning. It's not looking great for him so far. Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. Just to add to what you've said, I agree with Amy. Like, I'm very sex positive. I'm very, relationship positive in a lot of areas of my life. There are some certain styles I probably wouldn't do for personal reasons, but whenever I hear a particular score of people that we're seeing that's, quite high, in my opinion, it may not be everyone's, but when I hear a lot, it starts to make me think, like the fact that he mentioned over 30 women makes me think, I think we're entering into potential addiction territory. and there's also intimacy issues for sure. Does that mean people who have had a history of partners is necessarily an addict? Not necessarily. The devil is in the detail, obviously. But there's just something to this story about failed relationships, not being able to sit with grief, needing to have tons of partners in between, and they're mostly hookups, right? So this is like quick validation and dopamine hits, right? There doesn't seem to be a lot of intimacy here, which suggests there is an intimacy problem. Now, one thing that I also want to go to really quickly is this whole thing of him cheating and bringing it up to you. I understand where you're coming from, Jill, when you're like, well, I think that when you self-reflect, you can redeem yourself. That process takes a bloody long time. Like, I have to be honest, merely saying it out loud, like, oh, I've cheated on my partner, is not self-reflection and deep. Well, I mean, I guess it's like the early stages of self-reflection. You're aware of the fact that you've done something that doesn't sit well with you. But coming clean about that doesn't erase the shame. It just sort of brings awareness to it. It's like, oh yeah, that's there. And I also think too, it's almost not okay that he's done it in this particular way because I feel like he's almost expecting you to absolve him of that stuff. That's actually something he needs to sit with and work through. So that's just one aspect I want to say. The other thing too I want to throw in there too is to say that I understand wanting to believe in the goodness of people. The one thing I'm just going to say as a caution is just be careful of magical thinking because we all have the capacity within reason to behave well and in ways that are beneficial to the broader community, but it doesn't mean that we always act in that highest good all of the time. And we've got to be very careful about relying on the good of others without also taking into consideration the context of every other aspect of themselves as well too. So that's just something to be very mindful of because I've done the whole like seeing the good in other people and things when it's been an absolute dumpster fire of a situation. I mean, the only good in that it would be, in my experience, to not engage with the dumpster fire. And then lucky last, his ex-girlfriend's being on depression medication. So consistent with people who have a severe dismissive avoidant attachment style is that they tend to get themselves involved with people who are very needy and need a lot of hand-holding and support. And some of these women have cheated on him, which suggests to me that he doesn't have a good dating picker, if you will. He tends to go for people who are quite in need of a lot of hand-holding and support. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's very similar to his mum, because usually there can be there's a connection between if you've had an overbearing mum and you've someone with attachment issues, you might find yourself dating very similar kind of people who need you all the time. That's my 2 cents on that. Amy, did you want to add anything before I continue?
Yeah, just a few things. Oh my God, everything you just said was such gold, Ken. I hope everybody rewinds and like takes a mental screenshot because you just poured out so much wisdom. I just want to touch on one thing that's so important that we see a lot is that, you know, this idea that when people confess something or acknowledge something, and then we take that to mean that they are up for the challenge of self-improvement and self-reflection and changing patterns. What Ken said is so true, you guys. Just because somebody is aware of something does not at all mean that they have the intention, desire, or capacity to do what is necessary to change that pattern, to change that belief, to change whatever it is within them that would result in them actually changing their behavior. And oftentimes, it does a reverse wherein they think that the whole fact that they admit something or that they're self-aware of something means in and of itself that they are changing and have, humility and self-awareness. And, that's just not what it means. It's a tiny step in the right direction, but it's not what it means. And, you have to pay attention to the behavior and the repetitive behavior to see, oh, is this person capable of change? Do they want to change? And then just one other small thing. You know, what Ken was saying about the magical thinking, that is so, so true. And this is something that I find people with anxious attachment and fearful avoidance, leaning anxious, love to believe in the best version of people. And it makes us feel good and happy and hopeful. And before we know it, we have given this person the best possible mental makeover of their lives, and we have created this beautiful version of them. And that is the version of them that we become attached to and transpose onto this version of our relationship. And that is so bad for us to do because it leads to such heartbreak. And we become attached to this amazing version of them that we see in their potential. And most often in these kinds of situations, the person does not live up to this version of them that we have created in our minds. And the last thing I'll say about that is that I think that that is actually very much so tied to this idea that when you are in a relationship and you're dating someone and you feel like, wow, I really like this person. They're treating me better than anyone else has treated me before. Unfortunately, that's so heartbreaking. And that tells us that, okay, wow, you might not have been treated with the validation and love that you deserve. And so you're likely not giving yourself that validation and love that you deserve. So when you come across somebody that's giving you a little bit of that, it just means the world and they're the best person. And so, it's leading us down a path of wounded attachment versus an even playing field and really getting to know someone slowly and appropriately.
I couldn't agree more. Yes to everything you just said. And, I understand from way back when I was in this headspace, the idea of like loving and nurturing ourselves seems so maudlin. Like, why the hell would we do that? Like, if we, why would we need to spend time loving ourselves when we can get someone else to love us instead? Like, what's the point of self-love? Like, I understand some of the cynicism that can arise with that. However, as I've learned the hard way, and I'm sure Amy, you have as well too, that self-love is not just about the bubble baths and the meals we prepare for ourselves. It's actually a very holistic experience, and it's also about repair as well. And if we're constantly seeking for someone else to fill our gaps, which is not to say we shouldn't, we need some forms of external support, validation, and people in our lives to complement our own well-being. That's what this human experience is about, in my opinion. But often a lot of people who have anxious and fearful avoidant attachment styles, we become so other focused that we forget about our own internal stuff. And again, this is just a lot of attachment wounding that needs to be worked on. Anyways, let's continue. One significant event in our relationship occurred one night when we became intimate. Oh, there's the pattern. Unfortunately, I didn't realize something was wrong until I noticed I was bleeding after sex. I thought resting would help, but it got worse, and I had to go to the emergency room the next day. I'm so sorry. That's terrible. During this time, he was on a road trip with friends. He didn't even call me after seeing a picture of me in the hospital with an IV. Oh my God. His only response was to ask me to keep him updated without any follow-up to check on how I was doing. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it or worry him, but his lack of concern made me feel unimportant. We're going to pause right here. So, interestingly, Amy, when you said he's a DA, because I know you've read this ahead of time and I haven't, my brain was like I was thinking, well, that's a jump. I wasn't like mentally sure if he was going to be a DA or not. But after reading that, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, he's a like mega DA.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yes, yeah, because I'm reading it ahead of time, so I've already like come to a lot of conclusions. So I'm ahead of the game, but absolutely, this is a very DA thing to do. And I would say in all contexts, if a DA responds like this, if you're injured or hurt, I would not jump to the conclusion that they immediately don't care or that they don't have the best of intentions in this specific instance, unfortunately. I do think that this is due to like his lack of character and lack of care and lack of emotional maturity that he's behaving like this to you, Jill. But in general, dismissive avoidance do not do well when people are in pain, when people are in an emergency. And they will kind of go missing, unfortunately, a lot of the time.
Or they can sometimes do the opposite. Like, actually, I'd say maybe that's not true for DAs, but I've noticed some dismissive leaning FAs, and FAs in general might be really good at those care moments from time to time, depending on the context of the situation. Like, generally, themes of acts of service can happen for some, but not all. And I think it's very hyper or hypo. It's never in the middle. But I think with this, like, the thing that really made me go DA in my head was, the fact that there was no follow-up to check on how you were doing. It's like he's called you his girlfriend, and he's not even checking up on how you are when you're in hospital with an IV. Like, what the fuck? Like, to me, I'm like, bro, where's your priorities at? Again, to what Amy was saying, I don't think it's a case of him not caring about you. It's just his own conflict with being able to demonstrate that care in a healthy manner. I think he's more pressed at this moment, being able to not deal with the discomfort of having someone who's in that position too. It can be very, look, I can understand it can be very triggering having intimate people in, positions of helplessness because you may feel like I don't know how to help them, but that's the point, is that we're not meant to fix and help people through actions. Sometimes it's just being present for them. And I think that is a struggle for people with insecure attachment, particularly dismissive avoidance and dismissive leaning fearfuls, is they struggle with presence.
Yes. Oh my gosh, very much so. And I totally agree with your assessment in that fearful avoidance, this is one of the biggest differences I see in the behaviors and the makeup of fearful avoidance versus dismissive avoidance is that fearful avoidance are so good in chaos, in an emergency, and in situations where other people might freeze. That's sort of like their comfort zone. They are so good at caretaking and, assessing your needs and meeting them and like just dropping everything to be there for you. Whereas dismissive avoidance, because I think they come from a history of not really getting to or learning to or having the opportunity to rely on other people to help them when they're in need, they truly feel so incapable. Like they don't know how to help people when they're in need. They're just like, I don't know. You're fine by yourself, right? I mean, I'm fine by myself when I'm sick. People don't take care of me. So why should I have to take care of you, sort of thing. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and this nicely ties into the next paragraph, which is after I was discharged, Jill writes, I called him, and the first thing he said was, "What's up?" Just fuck. Like, that's just god awful response. I
It's the worst. And sorry to interrupt, Ken, but I agree with you so much before you continue. When I read this in my mind, I was like, I definitely would have broken up with him before this, but if I hadn't, this would, after What's Up, I might have just been like, I'm never going to talk to you again. Goodbye. That is just so cold.
I completely agree. Like, I mean, how do you expect to be an intimate partner when you can't even, sit with the pain of what a person's been through in hospital? Like, I mean, that's fucked up. Like, and from the sounds of it too, not to judge the metric of pain that Jill was going through in hospital, but, from the sounds of it, put it like this. It sort of makes me question how would he cope if she had something even more egregious, which is not to say she wasn't suffering, but imagine if she had a life-threatening issue and he just was like, "Hey, what's up?" It's like, "Bro, where's your head at? Like you can't fucking do that." Like you can, I suppose there'll be consequences for it, but I mean, I to your point, Amy, this is where I'd be questioning. I wouldn't even be questioning. I'd be like, this is just not okay behavior at all for a partner, in my opinion. But again, I can see how, I'm not saying this happened to Jill, but I could imagine that, again, that magical thinking would be very hard to combat in a situation like this because you've already had that beautiful, introductory experience for a short while with this guy where there's the princess like treatment, the car rides with the music, you can get a lot of cognitive dissonance in this particular moment. So, Chill understandably says off the back of this, I was speechless. I couldn't believe that this was how someone I cared about would greet me. Yeah, see? He later messaged me saying the connection was bad and he would call me when he got back. I doubt the connection was bad. I felt devastated and abandoned. I bet you did. He could have reached out to check on me, but instead he made it seem like I was a burden and that he preferred to have fun with his friends. That's fucking terrible behavior. I expressed my disappointment and he apologized. Good on you, saying he was worried and couldn't sleep. Yeah, but that doesn't mean just because you couldn't sleep doesn't mean that you couldn't ask how she was. Like, Jesus. He offered to visit and admitted his immaturity, promising to prove his trustworthiness to me next time. Okay, that's I could understand where a second chance might be given off the back of this, but still, like that's pretty egregious. Like to me, I'd be like, and we're done because this is the thing, and I want to stress this. That level of immaturity ain't changing overnight. Like that level of immaturity, that's going to take decades to overcome, in my opinion. And the reason I'm really railing on this is because when we say, oh, we want to give people a chance and people can change, yeah, sure, they can. But real change is slow and gradual. He fucking retreated like, a badger in the winter. Like he ain't coming out until like it's warm again. You know, this is learned behavior and he's not going to overcome that overnight. So just wanted to have that little mini rant. Amy, did you want to say anything to that?
Oh my God, yes. And Ken can see me, you guys, but I'm nodding my head so vigorously that I'm about to fall off my chair. Like this is, if you take nothing from today's episode, this is the most important thing in the world that Ken is saying, you guys. When you want to giving someone a second chance might be the difference between ending something, being upset for a few weeks and moving on with your life, and you ending up in like 5 years of therapy. I mean, people, think about it. Think about how hard it is to change when you want to change with all of your will and might, and you have help changing. And then think about the possibility and how long it will take someone to change when they don't even really want to change and they're not even trying. And on top of it, not only did he like completely fail to show up in an appropriate, proper way when you're in the hospital, but you are in the hospital after an injury that involved him and that you got when you guys were being intimate. So the fact that he is being this blasé, nonchalant, and not caring when you were quite literally in the hospital after an intimate injury is beyond. I mean, so beyond. I'm so sorry that this happened to you. If I can rewind time, I wish that we can go back and and talk to you and try to convince you not to have given him a second chance because like Ken said, you know what? We want to believe in the best in people, and sometimes in doing so, we are really setting ourselves up accidentally for serious heartbreak.
This is where radical acceptance is so important, and it's hard. It's hard for people with insecure attachment. Why? Because magical thinking takes us out of reality. But reality looks at something like this and goes, this man ain't going to change anytime soon. Like, if this is his reaction to this, fuck me. Like, as you said, and I completely forgot about that detail. Thank you for reminding me, is he had contributed to the incident that sent you into hospital. You know, he's abdicating his responsibility. Now, if he's abdicating responsibility over something significant like this and just chalking it up to a bit of immaturity, it's like, bro, I don't know your age, but you're not a child, you're an adult. And if you are behaving like that when you've contributed to someone's pain and you've now made your partner feel abandoned and, felt like betrayed, you're not, I'm going to be brutally honest, you're not ready for a romantic relationship. Like, sorry, this is egregious sort of stuff. So, and he's not going to, like, that level of immaturity. We've got to be very fucking careful of excusing immaturity because, yes, technically, this is an example of emotional immaturity. But unlike a child who has the right to be immature within reason, of course, an adult does not. So, particularly when it pertains to the impact of our behavior on other people. Anyways, Jill writes, I gave him another chance, but my heart felt numb and I struggled to trust him again. Deep down, I still wanted our relationship to work, which is why I held on. Fair enough. Totally respect where you're coming from. No judgment from me on that one. And we kind of predicted that this is what was probably going to happen because, this happens a lot. I mean, I've done it. I know what that's like, so I get it. He later mentioned that his friends were really worried about me and even asked him to make a trip back to visit. Oh, great, the friends are concerned, but not him. However, he told them it was fine because I said so. He also thought I was exaggerating my injury until he saw how badly I was walking. Great example of minimization there. He doesn't want to take in the full impact of what's happened. 3 days later, I was unsure if my wounds were reopening as I started bleeding again. This time, he accompanied me to the hospital. Although he wanted to go to work, he decided to stay for my sake. Throughout the entire time, he seemed distant and cold, but he still took care of me, ensuring I felt okay. He even remarked that he was grateful for the chance to redeem himself. Oh, great, so it's about him. Like, this is again up there with that whole point about him, you know, blasely sharing, oh, and I cheated in my last relationship. So it seems like this is him trying to seek forgiveness through you. It's not about him actually sitting with the discomfort being like, why the hell did I stay away from my partner after I contributed to their injury? Like, why the heck did I think her injury wasn't so bad? Like, this is really fucked up.
It is so fucked up. And you guys know how I feel about this because I never drop the F-bomb during our podcast. But it is. And you know what? And by the way, I love the F-bomb, but I think I have a little PTSD from my lovely grandmother slapping my knee every time I said it. So that's why I don't say it, but
I
I
won't
love it.
slap you for it. That's okay. I'm too far to slap you away
Thank
for
you, guys.
any bit of that.
But and just to continue what Ken said, 1,000,000%. In fact, in my notes here, I have emotional immaturity in all caps and bold and underlined. I'm getting the sense that this relationship is unfortunately all about him. It feels like it almost has nothing to do with Jill from his perspective. It's about him sort of on his journey of redeeming himself. I also suspect, unfortunately, that since he seems to not be able to be single for any duration of time, he might be also using this relationship as a means of numbing and avoiding his own stuff. And one thing we have to really pay attention to here is he is behaving in this awful, removed, cold way, acting as though you are a burden to because you're in the hospital with an injury that he in part caused. This is the beginning of your relationship. People often are, we are on our best behavior in the beginning. If this is his best behavior, my God, like we do not want to see where he's at in a year, in a few months. I mean, I'm sorry, but this man is acting like he does not care. He's acting like he's emotionally in seventh grade, maybe. And it's awful. It's really kind of awful.
You just said something there that gave me an epiphany for my own stuff, but without going into that, all I will say is that phrase, he's gone into this relationship for himself, not for you. Wow. Just wow. Like, bang on. Because it really does sound to me like he's trying to give you like the whole princess treatment and everything, almost as a way of like making him feel better about himself. Like, see, I'm showing up, I'm doing the right thing. It's like, yeah, but you're very selfish. Like you're thinking exclusively about what you get out of this. And sure, like I think it's not to paint him out to be like completely Machiavellian. It's not that. It's more just the fact that I think that he like with all these cases, I always say avoidance are very conflicted people. I mean, we all are to a certain degree, but especially avoidance. And I feel like that hospital experience really demonstrates on one hand so many different parts of him that are in conflict. Yes, I think there is positive regard for you, but I think it's also overshadowed by shame over past behavior, him feeling guilty for not showing up previously, him wanting to try and absolve himself through you so he doesn't feel like a bad person. There's also the minimization aspect of not wanting to like really take in the full impact of what's going on. There's more to it than that. But the point is, I think these very self-serving protective parts of him, we all have them, but for him, they're really on like they're really strong in his case. And so just chef kiss. So that was such a great
Yeah.
breakdown.
Oh
But
my God.
before I continue to
And
do anything else,
sorry, Ken. Yes, I just wanted to say, you know, emotional immaturity, like Ken said, we're not saying that he's Machiavellian. We're not saying that he's a narcissist or that he has bad intentions. But here's the thing, and it is so important, especially if we lean anxious, or secure, or truly any style. If you notice that you're in a relationship with someone and you are seeing emotional immaturity, especially around serious issues, sickness, conflict, it is dangerous. Run. Run for the hills because, like Ken said, it takes time to become emotionally mature. It takes introspection, humility, reflection, personal development work. And emotional immaturity is reckless in relationships. It doesn't just mean, oh, that's cute, they're immature. No, no, no. It means they are not going to give you the love, respect, attention, and commitment that is required to have a functioning relationship.
yep, completely agree with everything you've said. Anyways, let's continue with what Jill writes. So, Jill continues, things really took a turn after his injury. So, did he get the reason I'm just pausing here for just context is was this truly an injury he had, or was it after your injury and the recovery of your injury that you're in hospital for? It's probably not going to be a major it's probably not going to be a thing which is going to derail the understanding of this letter, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyways, he started going on work trips a lot more, and we ended up spending way less time together. Back then, I didn't pick up on any signs because he seemed totally committed. Yeah, well, makes sense. There was one moment where he mentioned how busy work was getting and asked how I felt about seeing him less often. When he brought this up, I worried he might be suggesting a breakup, but he reassured me. He said he always wanted to be transparent about his dating intentions and never wanted to lead anyone on. Ugh. Classic. I'm getting PTSD from that. He encouraged me to communicate if I ever felt unhappy or unsatisfied so we could work on things together. Oh, great. So it's all on you. So this is making it seem like I feel like if you even mentioned how unhappy you felt, he'd still break up with you because he'd be like, I can't give you what you're looking for. It's like, this is just like, I feel like he's setting you up. I don't feel like this is actually healthy, communication at all, given the context. If you were in this, you probably wouldn't understand it for what it is. But because I've read so many of these cases, I know Amy's worked on many of these too. This does not seem like a healthy, how do I put it like this? What seems like healthy. We should communicate with one another. We should try and work on this. But I know people with dismissive avoidant attachment, they don't want to communicate. They especially don't want to hear your complaints and issues because if they hear that, they're going to feel triggered and then they'll break up with you. So I'm just throwing it out there like that. Amy, did you want to say anything to that?
I will just say that you are a fortune teller because you are spot on.
Oh
I
shit, is that what
completely,
happens?
yeah, well, I agree with you, and because I've read the whole letter and you haven't, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. Um, I think he is absolutely setting you up, Jill. This is not oh, wow, this is someone who's invested and wants to communicate and figure things out and really be vulnerable with each other and hear each other. No, no, no. And truly, and I think Ken will probably agree with me as we go on, I find his behavior to be completely manipulative. And I just want to say one thing, Jill. And by the way, like this is not me picking on you whatsoever. I realize that, you know, you are where you are in your journey, and I am an attachment coach. So of course, my hindsight is 2020, and I'm looking at it through the lens. So just know that. But when you say things were really looking up after your injury, I believe it's your injury because I think that was just a typo when she said his injury.
I thought she said
Um,
it was looking down. Oh no, she said things would took a turn after his injury.
yeah, oh, things took a turn. You're right. Okay, so things took a turn right down after his injury, which was your injury. But then you said, but you didn't pick up any signs because he seemed totally committed. I have to say to you with love, he does not seem totally committed. There are red flags from the very start that he is not committed. And I just want to point that out to you because this is a perfect area for you to introspect and say, okay, why, what is going on inside of me that I viewed his behavior as being totally committed to me? Um, and of course, and I just want to I just want to call out that I understand that oftentimes with DAs, their actions don't align with their words. So there will be almost, I mean, in so many cases, they will be saying to you, yes, I'm committed. Yes, we're on the same page. Yes, this is what I want. But their actions 1,000,000% do not align. And here's where we really have to take people at their actions and not at their words, no matter how sweet those words are.
Completely agree with everything you just said, Amy. Let's continue with this. So, uh, he often told me I was one of the prettiest girls he'd ever seen and that I should be more confident in myself. Hearing those words made me really happy. I truly thought I had found my person. This kind of links to what you were saying, Amy, which is, it's very easy to hold on to those kind of moments and gloss over the glaring warning signs and red flags. And shortly after, another major incident arose where I realized I hadn't seen him for more than 2 weeks due to his busy schedule. He had agreed to meet with me once his car was fixed, but instead he ended up helping out at his mum's store. Ugh, the mum. I felt really upset and called him, expressing that I felt like a low priority compared to his work and friends. He seemed fed up with my negative emotions and suggested we end things. Wow. Saying he didn't think it was working. He appeared frustrated that he couldn't meet my needs. Wow. Which made me feel let down in many ways. I was taken aback and unsure how to respond. I'd shared my concerns with the hope of improving our relationship, but it felt like he wasn't willing to put in the work to make it, sorry, put in the effort to make it work. I asked to talk in person about our relationship. I expressed my love and desire to make it work, and he agreed to give it another try. However, his lack of response during the talk made me anxious. He shared his fears of being alone due to past relationship failures, guilt for hurting me, and concerns about our physical compatibility. The dynamic of our relationship felt different since the breakup. I'm reluctant to share my concerns, fearing it might push him away. I sensed some resentment from him, especially when he said, "You signed up for this relationship. I'll fuck off." Still, I reassured him that we're both committed to making it work despite his busy schedule. He also seemed to attempt putting a bit more effort into this relationship after the initial breakup. I once asked if I should introduce him to my friends and family members, and he gave me a suggested time. He also called and informed me when there was a change of plan instead of just texting me the last minute when it happened. He opened up and shared more about his family background and his close friends with me. We tried to call twice a week if we couldn't see each other usually. I would be the one to initiate the call, but sometimes he checked up on me when I didn't respond for a while. We finally had our first getaway after a long wait, spending a lovely night together. It turned out to be the last time I saw him as my boyfriend. Shit, that's ominous. The trip was wonderful and we got along really well. I experienced some of the happiest moments of my life with him. He was sweet and caring, always concerned when I took a little longer in the washroom or needed my medication. He felt bad that I didn't have anyone to spend the holidays with while he would be with his family on trips, including celebrating his birthday. I'm going to take a quick pause here. His attentiveness to you when you need your medication takes me back to his attentiveness with previous partners with their antidepressants. He's very much an acts of service man, but this is all done out of survival. What I mean by that is he has grown up taking care of women who have presumably challenges. And his way of, getting his needs met is to, on one hand, attend their needs and create distance. This is not true intimacy. He can't do it because his way of it's all about control for him. It's all about, I will give you what you need from this very specific survival skill that I've learned from dealing with presumably a person who probably has mental health problems. And I will try and do this with you. That's just something I wanted to quickly say.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And again, like I also just think that these tiny little moments of him actually being nice, first of all, the bar is in hell. This is bare minimum. And, I I understand, Jill. At the same time, I want you to know I 1,000,000% understand. I'm right there with you at how you are perceiving these things and why you're thinking that they're good signs. It makes so much sense to me, with the potential, anxious wounding that you might have, and so many of us have had at some point in life and still have. But um, again, I'll say it again, the bar is in hell. The fact that he's concerned that you're ill or helping you with your medications, it doesn't matter. When somebody tells us that they don't want to be with us, as much as we want to be with them, this is where we stop. If somebody expresses concerns about a relationship and they tell us that they don't want to be with us, they don't think it's working, we have a few choices. The first choice is just to say, okay, and leave. That's completely fine. That's probably the best thing to do, truly. The second thing we can do is say, okay, I disagree, and here's why. I think we should work this out. What do you think? If they still say no, we leave immediately, even if we think this is the love of our life and this is the best person in the world, because I promise you from the bottom of my soul, if they are not wanting to try, they are not your person. It is not the best person. And it is certainly not the best love that you will ever receive in your life. When we accept bad behavior and we chase someone and beg someone to be with us, we are quite literally telling them and us and our parts inside of ourselves, they are so much better than us. We are not worthy of them. They can do whatever they want, and we just have to accept whatever it is. And that is such a heartbreaking place to be. So please, whenever someone tells you or shows you that they do not want to be with you, believe them immediately and leave.
Yeah, easier said than done, but it's to
Yeah.
what Amy said, it's a lesson you learn through experiences like this. This man, I wouldn't even say has a foot in the door. He has like half a toe in the relationship door. He's not committed at all. Doesn't mean to say he doesn't like you, he doesn't have romantic feelings for you, but his fears are greater than the sum of his affection for you, which is just sad. And he's not himself. He's not authentic at all. He may have felt that way to you. That's okay. I'm not judging your experience, but I can tell you now, a lot of this behavior is coming from survival. It is not coming from an authentic, grounded place. And I know this is usually what inspires people then to be like, oh, can you do some videos explaining how to spot this in people as well too? But truthfully, my answer will always be, when you do the inner work, you'll see it a lot more clearly in other people. Anyways, let's continue. He felt bad that I didn't have anyone to spend the holidays with while he was going to be on family with on trips, including celebrating his birthday. Again, this just feels more like concern for him, not for you. He even bought me an expensive gift worth about 700 bucks, which made me feel special, even though he couldn't spend the holiday season with me. I can understand why it makes you feel special, because again, it feeds into that whole thing of like giving you things that you probably haven't felt before from other people, so I get that. After the trip, his texts became less frequent, and he often had excuses when I tried to call. It felt like he was no longer including me in his future. We'd planned to celebrate his birthday after his family trip, but when I called to discuss it, he abruptly said he wanted to break up right before the year ended. His reason was vague, claiming he wanted to focus on work, which I didn't believe. I begged him to meet in person to talk, and after some insistence, he agreed. He mentioned that seeing me might change his mind, which gave me hope. Quick pause. He mentioned that seeing me might change his mind. Like, what? This man doesn't sound like he's in charge of his own mind as well, too. And also, I think it's really unfair of him because he's already broken up with you twice due to, due to at first it was the whole, like, I can't give you what you're looking for. And now, it's about the fact that he wants to end things before the end of the year. Similarly, probably because he couldn't find ways to meet you. Sorry, he couldn't find ways to fit you in his life. Again, I feel like these decision makings are coming from guilt and shame from him. These are not, this is not a emotionally healthy man at all. What are your thoughts on this, Amy?
Oh gosh, I don't think nobody is gonna like what I have to say. Jill, I know you're not gonna like this, but I'm really not getting a sense that this man has deep affection here. The relationship started very, very quickly. Um, there doesn't, I don't really see that there was like this intense bonding and like a true relational foundation built and before he started acting up, before he started showing several signs of disinterest and being non-committal. It seems truly like every single nice gesture that he extends or every moment of care is completely selfish on his part, meaning he is just trying to convince himself that he's a caring or good person, or like Ken said, out of, his own wounding to having to caretake in certain ways. And, um, I think what he should have done here when he broke up with you for the second time is truly just close it completely. The fact that he met with you and that he said seeing you might change his mind, I think is kind of cruel. And I actually think maybe he was trying not to be cruel in that moment. But, it literally breaks my heart to read the words that you begged him to meet in person after he broke up with you for the second time. Nobody should ever be in a position or have had experiences in life where they are begging people to stay with them. And I know probably most of us have been there. I have certainly felt like that in relationships before, and it's just devastating. It's awful, and and my heart just freaking breaks for you here. It really does.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I completely agree. No, and I think it's just, I think it's really, I think it's cruel what he's doing, and I think it's unfair. Like, I think, he's obviously a people pleaser too. He couldn't just say no. Like, he really struggles with guilt and shame, and that's apparent throughout this entire letter. So, when we met, he looked worn out. Although he tried to act normal, it was clear that he had a lot on his mind. He avoided deeper conversation and stuck to small talk until I asked him why he initiated the breakup. He said he can't give me what I want. He also mentioned he might have to move to another province and wanted to prioritize work over our relationship. Eye roll. He also expressed feeling inadequate, especially since his friends are already engaged or married, which left me feeling very confused. My God, this man. I reassured him that if relocating was necessary, I could move with him due to the flexibility of my job. Okay, this, Jill, I'm sort of going to where Amy was going. I know you're fighting really hard for this relationship, but if there's anything you learn from this experience, I want you to understand this. He's not fighting for you. Like, you're the one who's like pulling in, begging and pleading to try and make it work. And I can tell how much you love this man and you want to make it work with him. He's just not in it. Like, he's really not. Like, it's clear as day. Like, there's too much resistance from him to be in this relationship. Doesn't mean he's not that into you, as in, like, he's never had romantic feelings at one point. No, but doesn't mean that he wants to work on this? Absolutely not.
1,000,000%. And like it's breaks our hearts to say this, but I'm going to say something, Jill, and it might feel triggering at first, but then I think it might bring you comfort. I would also question, do you really love this man? Or do you have an attachment with him from wounding? And I say this because I can't pinpoint any point in this letter where he has acted in such a way that somebody could fall in love with him. Maybe you really do love him, and maybe you didn't write all about the things that happened in the month that made you have feelings for him. But what I'm really sensing is that this is coming from your very deep wounding, and and I hope that that gives you hope in that, like, this does not seem like a situation where you lost the love of your life and this nothing is ever going to be this good. But I think that this seems like much more of an attachment from wounding than a situation where two people are deeply in love and like they're having attachment clashes. His presence in this relationship seems to be completely self-motivated, and he seems to be being a people pleaser and maybe not wanting to be the bad guy and just tell you outright that he does not want to be in this relationship. But his actions could not be clearer. And truly, some of his words could not be clearer.
I have to agree, Amy, and it's a bit of a sobering thing to say this as well too, because this reminds me a lot of a situation I went through years ago, which is to say, I actually think that, look, I'll speak from my own experience. It's very easy to love the person when they do acts of service when you haven't been given a lot of that as a child. Like when you haven't been attuned to, cared for, or looked after, it's so easy to fall in love and attach to the part of your partner who's really good at being very acts of servicey because the way they go about it can really feel like they're filling a gap that you've needed filled for so long that you haven't unfortunately had taken care of, that it's very easy to fall in love with that being like, oh my God, I never knew how much I needed that. But are you falling in love with the full person or just that one part of them? And in my experience, I'll speak for myself, it was just the part. Like, yeah, there were some other aspects of this person that I really liked as well too. But if I'm being completely honest, the thing that really, spun the dial from like moderately interested to, oh my God, I'm head over heels for them, obsessed, was the way they treated me because I hadn't been treated that way growing up as well too. So this points to a lot of emotional neglect and deficits that, can happen for many survivors of emotional neglect. So just putting it out there and saying that. Anyways, um, I asked him if he felt we were incompatible after the trip, and he responded that we were very compatible in many ways. He mentioned that he had a lot of fun during our time together and appreciated that I laughed at his jokes. I wanted to discuss things further, but he left abruptly saying he had an early shift. He promised he would see me again, which gave me some hope. He also mentioned I could call or message him, which left me feeling even more confused. Oh, this is all future faking bullshit. His actions indicated otherwise. He didn't answer any calls, though he did message me to arrange picking up the pottery. After that, he kept me updated about his schedule until his new job started. Now, I'm not sure if I'll ever hear from him again. He also unfollowed me on social media, but still keeps me as one of his followers. To provide some background, he grew up with a very smothering mum and lost his father at a young age, which forced him to take on family responsibilities. His mum is very controlling, and he feels the need to pretend to be the good son in her eyes. She has high expectations for him, particularly concerning finding the perfect partner, which adds to his stress. I'm going to just say this now. When you have suffered enmeshment like this, you are actually being what I call spiritually assaulted because your sense of self, your sense of direction, your internal compass has been completely obliterated by the presence of another person. And this can happen if you have an overbearing parent of any gender or non-binary person as well too. It's just to say that when someone is literally smothering you, particularly at a young age, you lose a lot of that sense of direction.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. And, we have to remember, for those of you listening, enmeshment is emotional neglect. It is where the parent's needs and wounds and life experiences are more important than the child's. He has been completely engulfed by his mother in childhood, and so it makes so much sense that as a DA, one of his biggest wounds seems to be one of engulfment. And it's it's an experience that when you said that so beautifully, Ken, it's spiritual assault. It's like your personhood, your autonomy is just extinguished, and you are just existing to serve this other person who, ironically's existence is supposed to be, or at least their role at that time is supposed to be serving you as the caretaker. And that creates somebody who gets very irritated and feels very enclosed on very easily in adult romantic relationships, which we're seeing here.
And in this context, it's specifically with women. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has a bad relationship with men or he has very superficial male relationships. So, in this context, and I mean, look, I'm no stranger to some of these themes, which is why I can understand and I actually feel sorry for this guy in that context. But his behavior is simply not okay. Just because we might have similarly experienced similar things growing up, two people can go about it in very different ways. And Jill adds, the pressure he got from his mum might explain why he seeks external validation from other women. It absolutely does. And also stems from low self-esteem. Yep. He has one brother who struggles with anxiety and has a weaker personality, which, yeah, wouldn't surprise me because if the mum's like that, it means he probably doesn't have a strong sense of self, which results in their mum being more attentive to him while placing greater expectations on my ex. He often feels overwhelmed by stress and sometimes drinks to help him sleep. He struggles with issues related to pornography and finds it challenging to trust others. He recognizes that these challenges aren't anyone else's fault and understands that it takes time for him to express his feelings. Time, more like a lifetime in his case. He mentioned that he tries to avoid quote unquote falling in love because he's unsure whether what he feels is genuine love or simply infatuation in someone. Oh, great. So he over intellectualizes it. He frequently feels like a burden to others, whilst making it a challenge for him to communicate his needs and thoughts. Whilst he's a good listener, he tends to avoid conflict, believing that fighting is unnecessary. I really wanted some closure from him. I believe that if both individuals are willing to communicate, no problem is insurmountable. However, I know that this situation is ultimately out of my control and I can't change anyone's feelings or decisions. I can't help but wonder why he felt so compelled to let me go. Even when one of his girlfriends cheated on him, he waited a month before breaking up with her and moving on to a new relationship. He has been in several long distance relationships, suggesting that distance shouldn't have been an issue for him. I felt a strong connection with him, which makes me question how much he really cared about our relationship. I wonder if I know his true self or just a masked version. Were our moments together genuine or were they lies? He never introduced me to his friends or his mum, leaving me feeling inferior compared to past girlfriends. Everything that happened felt so surreal. Believe me, I know. I see so much potential for our relationship to develop into something amazing and fulfilling, but that's based on how I feel. Yet he chose to sabotage it without even giving it a chance. It's ironic that before we met, he said, I hope I can meet all your expectations, but ended the relationship with, I can't give you what you want. Thank you for reading the letter, Jill. Jill, I'm going to take a minute. Amy, do you want to chime in on the ending?
Yeah, like Ken was saying before, I have definitely experienced my own version of this before I had done any healing work or knew anything about attachment theory. And so trust me, and Ken, trust us when we say like we truly understand how it feels to have a situation like this happen when we are on the receiving end of this kind of behavior. And it is devastating, it is dysregulating, it is disorienting. And so I think, the thing that's sticking out to me most, Jill, and I have to be honest, to me, when I look at his behavior, I see, okay, this is obviously somebody who's very emotionally immature, who's working very, very hard to avoid himself and distract himself with women. He's got a lot of issues, but I have to say, I almost don't even want to waste any time even commenting on his behavior and his issues because what is so extremely striking to me are your wounds here, Jill. And I say that with so much compassion, being someone who was pretty much riddled with every wound that could exist, attachment wound that could exist in myself. So, you know, his behavior is so blatant and so obvious. And truly, I think it would have been kinder for him to cut the cord so much sooner and for him to just say, hey, this didn't work out and I'm so sorry and I don't think we should talk anymore because I think he was trying to be a people pleaser and like be quote unquote nice and like let you down more easily or make room for conversations, but nothing in his behavior is telling me that he wants to be in this relationship or that like his feelings are too strong and that's why all of these fears are coming up. Unfortunately, I think that this just seems to be a situation where maybe there was like a cool connection in the beginning. And I think because of your wounding and because of where you unfortunately might have lacked receiving some things that you so deserved to receive in childhood that gives us secure attachment, when you saw signs of this in him, you attached to those and you felt so filled in those areas because those areas were probably quenching for thirst, like, a plant in the desert with no water. And and I think that that attachment to having those needs just touched upon a little bit made you feel like you were falling in love with this person and that this connection was so sacred and strong. And I don't think that that is rooted in the reality of the situation. Um, I think it's more so in you getting these a little taste of these things that you so deserve. And it breaks my freaking heart because this man does not, deserve your level of heartbreak and love over this relationship. Um, what do you think, Ken?
I agree. I agree. I got to be honest, as I was reading this, I couldn't help but actually really relate to what you've been through, Jasmine, on so many levels. Like, I mean, I've gone through a situation like this before, and it's heartbreaking. And I think to offer another thought on this too, you ask yourself, were our moments together genuine or were they lies? This is where it gets a bit tricky, isn't it? Because I think we can tend to, we want to, if we say, well, they were all lies, part of us goes, but what about when they did this? And if we do the reverse, it's like, but how come they didn't want to fight for this if they said they really loved us? Here's the thing. I think both things can be true at once. I think he can be both a people pleaser in the worst ways possible and also have had genuine feelings of care for you in certain moments. I think that, you know, even if he wasn't, I think that whole thing he even said to himself, like, oh, I can't tell if this is just infatuation or if this is true love. He is so disconnected from himself, like truly disconnected, as if to say, like, oh, well, if you're infatuated, that's not love. It's like, when avoidance, particularly dismissives, get so intellectual about what they're feeling like that, they can be very alexithymic about it, and they don't really know how to just sit with the feelings that are coming up for them. And it can feel uncomfortable, I get it. But just because you're feeling infatuated doesn't mean that there's no romantic element in there too. And I think that they almost look for any excuse to just be like, see, it's infatuation, therefore we're not in love, therefore I should break this up with you. Now, as to why he chased the girlfriend who cheated on him, because we have to remember his basis for love is having a very, from what it sounds like, unstable mum, you know, be the basis for his definition of love, meaning that he looks after people who aren't doing too well with themselves mentally and emotionally, right? So he's not someone, he's going to be basing his self-worth on people who are not healthy. And it's not to say you don't have work to do on yourself. It's more just to say that he's looking for similar partners to his mum, and you're not it. And also, with regards to, you know, his mum, I understand that, you've been made to feel inferior because you haven't been able to do a lot of the things that previous girlfriends have. The previous girlfriends were probably people who got into a lot of clashes with his mum. Even though his mum wants him to find the perfect person, she doesn't. She wants him. She wants him to look after her. She's probably very needy. There's a really good book on this. You can read it. It's called Silently Seduced. It's all about this, about emotional incest. But I'm going to round out here and say, I can understand the confusion you have. I can understand feeling like this was all a lie. I think there would be pockets of truth in this and pockets of love in this. But this man is so deeply disconnected from himself emotionally. He's on a mission for absolution through the partners he dates. He's not ready for a relationship at all. He needs like a lot of rehab in the attachment space.
Yeah, oh my gosh, everything you said was so I agree with everything. It's so wise and true, Ken. And again, Jill, oftentimes, and I'll just add a little bit of my personal anecdote so that you can feel like I am really truly seeing you and relating to you because I am. the time in my life when I was very, very drawn to the most avoidant person I've still probably ever come into contact with, obviously, when we are avoidant with ourselves. We are disconnected with ourselves. And people can only connect with you to the level that they are connected with themselves. But oftentimes, what we don't really realize also when we have very anxious attachment or fearful, avoidant leaning anxious attachment or any insecure attachment is that we are also very avoidant with ourselves and we are also totally disconnected with ourselves. And I do see that disconnection from self in this letter with you, Jill, because I think that I get the sense that if you had a friend come to you and she described to you that she was dating someone who behaved in all of the ways that this man behaved towards you, that you would probably say to your friend, "Hey, this guy sucks. Dump him. This is not the relationship for you. This is not a person who's committed to you. Like, don't waste your time. You're amazing. You deserve so much more." And yet when we're in it, we can't see that because we are also so disconnected from ourselves. And so, Jill, oh my gosh, I hope what I wish for you to do is to take this information, to take this heartbreak, and to use this as a catalyst for so much growth and self-love. And here's the thing. Like Ken said earlier, self-love is not about like, oh, look at me, I'm in a bubble bath and I'm sipping, and I'm doing ayahuasca in the forest, dancing around with flowers. No. Self-love is not pretty, it's not glamorous, it's not a switch. It's something that we unfortunately have to work toward to cultivate when we are not given the gift of secure attachment, which is like we didn't win the secure attachment lottery, which has nothing to do with our inherent value at all. And so, Jill, please, I encourage you to speak with someone and really think about, do some reflection on why, what am I missing? What do I feel about myself deep inside that I think that this is acceptable behavior, that I chased him when he didn't want to be in this relationship? Because I promise you, analyzing that over analyzing his behavior and why he might be doing what he's doing is going to, it can change your life, Jill. It can change your life. If you nourish this relationship with yourself, it will change your life. If you don't, these wounds will continue to direct your life and you will continue to have relationships with this. And I just want to round out with one little quote. I'm going to butcher it, but it's this idea, and I hope it resonates with you because it certainly resonated with me when I was in a position similar to yours. And it is this: imagine being bitten by a snake, by a lethal snake, and you're there in the woods dying of its venom. Imagine spending your time trying to figure out why the snake bit you instead of trying to get help to save your life and get this venom out of you. So I just want you to think about that in the context of this relationship. And I just wish you so, so much love and healing because I promise you, it is so much better than this. It can be so much better than this. You can feel so much love but it really does start with yourself, unfortunately. And I know that that's a boring and scary answer, but it's true.
Completely agree with everything you said, Amy. I want to just finish my piece off by saying, Jill, I'm so sorry you've been through this because I know what it's like. Amy knows what it's like. It's brutal. It's awful. Your questions you're experiencing are totally fair and valid for where you're at right now. If you need a bit more of an autopsy phase to better understand what happened, by all means, take it. But the pathway to healing is exactly what Amy said. It's where you get introspective and be like, why was I so attracted and drawn to this person? What was it about their actions that really activated me in particular ways? Because if you can get to that and you can start to work on that, you'll be able to overcome the pain of this experience and hopefully begin to challenge some of the concepts and ideas you've had too, because I think what Amy's, described and also some of the things I mentioned about magical thinking, like it, when you recognize it for when it's happening, you gain that agency and power back over these attachment woundings and thus are able to heal and not let this happen again. I'm sure this guy may have felt to you like there's so much potential. Believe me, I felt like my ex and I had a lot of potential too. And it was also a situationship that was very short. Well, yours wasn't a situationship, but it was short. With the power of hindsight, with all the work I've done on myself, I can tell myself now, hell no. There was nowhere for that to go for me. But in the moment when you're going through it, it's okay to feel that way. All right. Thank you, Jill, for submitting this letter. And I look forward to being back on for more letter readings in the next week.